Hi, I'm John, and this is my video about ASP.NET Core Identity. So in this video, I'm going to be giving a brief overview of identity in ASP.NET Core applications. So I'm first going to start by talking through what is ASP.NET Core Identity, and then we're going to be looking at the two distinct options that are available: individual user accounts and integration with the Microsoft Identity Platform. So let's start by looking at what is ASP.NET Core Identity. Well, this is a package that you can easily add to your ASP.NET Core MVC or Razor Pages application, and it provides out of the box a membership system that can be used to log in, log out, register, or allow users to manage their accounts. And it provides a full suite of tools to help developers create, manage, and authenticate users. Ultimately, ASP.NET Core Identity does work out of the box, but when we're looking at our specific use cases, we can make a lot of customizations to cater for them. So the first distinct option is individual user accounts, and this adds the log in and log out and account capability to the application out of the box. So this is the easiest option to get started with. All we need to do is enable identity. If you've created a web application in Visual Studio before, it will give you a drop down where it will ask you what type of identity you want. There's none, which adds no identity, it's just a blank application. Then there's individual user accounts, which is this option, and this is whereby we're holding the user information in our own data storage and we're not using any cloud services. And then there's Microsoft Identity Platform, which is the cloud integration, which I'll get into more shortly. So ultimately, we can, with individual user accounts, it works outside the box. We get our application created. All we need to do then is the application database context, apply a migration. That will configure the database for identity with the tables we need, and then we can get going. So as I mentioned, identity is managed and stored in the application by itself. This can be a SQL database, which is pretty typical. We use Entity Framework Core as we normally would, but it is also flexible and we can use other solutions, including, as an example, Azure Table Storage. We also have the option of adding external authentication, such as Google, Facebook. So as you're signing a website, as you've probably seen before, when you've got the option of logging in with Google or Facebook, you can have that same capability. That's not provided by default, but it's something that we can add in. So then to look a bit more at individual user accounts and the options. So we've got the ability to extend the identity user and identity role. So that default out-of-box identity gives us a pre-configured identity user and identity role class, and these are just base classes. We can then modify them and we can add information that we want to store about the user, like date of birth, home address, phone number, whatever it might be, profile picture, another example here. So we can change the data store from the default entity framework to another storage solution. That's up to us. Entity Framework Core is a typical option we might use, but we've got flexibility. We can modify the validation logic for usernames, passwords, the sign up or the register experience. We can customize to collect that information that additional information that we want to hold. We can do our validation around those fields as well. Scaffolding, so the base application doesn't have the parts of the user interface that the identity component gives to us out of the box. So if you create an ASP.NET Core application with the identity of individual user accounts, you'll notice there's no files or folders related to identity visible initially, even though if you run the application you can see things to do with identity, but then in Visual Studio you can't. So what you need to do is scaffold the items related to identity, the ones that you want to customize, and then you'll be able to see them in Visual Studio and you can make your customizations to the logic or to the front end. So then we've got lockout policies and two-factor authentication, so we can customize those options. We can also I'll get into the Microsoft Identity Platform next, but that provides a good mechanism for two-factor authentication, but you can do it with individual user accounts as well. And authorization checking for actions and UI. So by authenticating the user, once they're signed in, we can control based on whether they're signed in or not, being one thing, and what roles they have assigned being another thing. We can choose which parts of the front end that they can see. So in particular web pages, we can use logic that says if the user is not signed in, they can't see this. They must sign in first. When they sign in, there must be a certain role, otherwise they can't see this. So an example might be the home page. You must be an administrator to see an option to configure settings or have an admin view. So we can do that kind of thing. We can check that users are authorized, check their roles, and then shape the user interface based on that. Also, what actions they can load in our controller. We can make sure users are authorized before they can access certain pages, and redirect them to another page if they're not authorized or authenticated. Okay, so then the other distinction is the Microsoft Identity Platform. So this now is integration with the Microsoft Cloud and Azure Active Directory. So Azure Active Directory is the central identity service that is provided as part of Microsoft 365 or Office 365 or Azure. So it's a central database of users. And if you've got Office 365 or Microsoft Teams, you'll certainly be using or have an Azure AD account, and that's what you'll be using to authenticate. This isn't Microsoft accounts like consumer and personal Microsoft accounts. Is more specifically work at school accounts for Azure AD anyway. So it encompasses a broader range of services. So if you're familiar with Azure AD, a lot of enterprise-grade features around identity and security. It really is enterprise-grade in its capabilities. We've got stuff like multi-factor authentication, conditional access, which controls where you can sign in from. You can say you can only sign in from a corporate device, for example, or behind a certain IP address. And it provides B2B, which is between different tenants, business to business, business to consumer, which is very similar to the kind of being able to sign in with Google and Facebook, but business to consumer can put a sign-in page that's provided by Azure in front of your application. Multi-factor authentication, as I mentioned, single sign-on. So if you're authenticating to Office 365 or Microsoft 365 and you're logged in, you could potentially integrate this with your web application so that if a user is authenticated to Microsoft 365 or Azure, in that browser window they can also access your application without needing to sign in again. And actually this can come right down to Windows as well. So if you signed into Windows, you're automatically authenticated to Microsoft 365. You don't need to enter credentials, and then same for your web application if it's integrated. So then we've got user data is managed by Azure AD, so we don't hold the users in our own database with this option. Integrates with a range of cloud services across Microsoft 365 and Azure, and then it's built on standards such as OAuth 2, OpenID, and SAML. That concludes my presentation on .NET and Identity. Thank you for watching.